So hello, Larry, Robert, Dana, and Lori. So far. Today I didn't have anything really specially prepared, so I thought I was probably going to talk. And let me just find which one of these things. This document. Oh, not that one. Okay, I'll just find on my own. I want to share a window. Oh, it's the Zoom meeting. Okay, so this is the one. Okay. So I was don't worry about this window, that's going to go away. So I want to talk about h5py kind of so those who don't use Python, probably not much helpful, but it's kind of popular and kind of a lot of people are using it. So and I kind of know something about it, so it's a win-win-win for this kind of occasion. And so what I wanted to say is cover this new release. Strictly speaking, it's from yesterday, and I don't even know it's even made it all the way to the typical Python distribution package management package managers. And so, but it's out there, and so I wanted to cover some of the things. I think they're kind of interesting. Some of the issues that were being fixed or decided not to fix. So I know that HDF crowd tend to like supercomputing and HPC, so there were quite few issues raised in the last several months, trying to build h5py on some kind of HPC systems, and the problems with the build was not really had anything to do with the HDF5 library or with h5py. It had to do with the MPI Python package, which is called MPI4py. And there was the h5py, those versions that were already out there in the public, they actually listed the version of h5py package that collided with a more recent build and installation tooling in Python. There was some completely bizarre mistake in the string that defines the versions of some other package that MPI4py was requiring. And this new Python installation and build tooling was rejecting that string, that format. It's calling it ill-formatted, and that was basically getting the problem. So with this release, the version of MPI4py was increased, so that should probably take away 30% of issues on h5py repo rate. For the upcoming Cython 3, that's kind of the internal stuff. Cython is the translator between Python into C code. Or let's say Cython has its syntax that's superset of Python, but sole purpose is that facilitates translation of that code into C code. And that's essentially how h5py interfaces with the HDF5 library. And it's been used in many other projects. That's one of the main ways how Python reaches out to other libraries in C or C++. And so the upcoming version 3 of Cython introduces a bunch of changes that are now complaining various things in h5py code. And this fix was trying to sort of improve that compatibility. By the way, Cython was forever 0 point something. I think the current version is going to be 0.29, I think. And now suddenly we're going to go to version 3. So I mean, that's hope. That means that even HDF5 library can jump from 1 point something to 7.6. Why not? And so that's that on this kind of HPC related level. The new features. So there is now redirect chunk. That's essentially the HDF5 library's redirect chunk function, and now added a new argument that allows passing a buffer, actually any Python object that supports buffer property. So the idea is that it really makes even faster passing of data between Python objects and the HDF5 library and reading and writing. So and this person actually measured it up a little, and there was some shaving off of improvement basically. So that's now in the new release. And anyone has any questions, please stop me at any time. Kind of closely related is this ability to support the special method in Python called array. This method also helps communicating between NumPy and other Python objects with h5py, and that's now also there. So there's a lot of interest nowadays to sort of pass and quickly pass the kind of objects that are directly written into HDF5 file. So to some degree, less or more, are kind of bypassing perhaps maybe the HDF5 library machinery or not. So array is not that one, the previous one was, but it goes to that way that now idea is that every Python object that kind of looks naturally as a multi-dimensional array, that it works much faster. And it sort of bypasses a lot of glue language between Python and HDF5 library as much as possible, of course. Yes, this was a very interesting bug. There are some other packages that use h5py as a backend storage, and they were allowing integers as group name. And the h5py was essentially raising the HDF5 libraries error, which was not that helpful in this case to really say what was the problem. But the problem was really that people were passing an integer as a number to HDF5 library and said, create me group with this name. And so the h5py now improved its detection, error detection, and now it's going to raise a proper message that says that only strings or byte objects are allowed as group names. And hopefully that will take care of, there were several bug reports with this problem, essentially as a cause. Astype, yes, that's removed. It's been deprecated for a couple of releases, and so now it's gone. This was kind of awkward syntax that you could actually get a data set, convert it to another floating type or any other data type, convertible obviously, and then do some kind of a slicing operation on it in one go, and people decided that's too much magic and just said no. We have new HDF5 functions being supported in h5py, and the reason for them is that someone said that when they were accessing their HDF5 files through a master HDF5 file, in other words, those HDF5 files were external links. The h5py was using the link access property that was effectively changing the time step of those access files, even though they were opened as read-only. And that was messing up their file change detection algorithms and methods. They were obviously looking at time steps of these files, and although they were open, the intention was to open them for read-only, they were indicating that they were actually modified or something. And so this fix now that's in the new release fixes that problem. Essentially, the link access property at least now follows what was the mode of opening the master file. Okay. All right, yeah, so we now actually have an H5Z register available through h5py to register an HDF5 filter. Before it was not exposed in any way. Bug fixes, let me see how these bug fixes work. Group contains will now use the default. Yeah, that's connected to this that I just talked about, the link access property list. This is the cleanup, the numpy.product function that was used to calculate the total number of elements in a bunch of places in h5py of a data set or a chunk are deprecated. So it was reverted to something that NumPy package supports, which I think is prod instead of product. Yeah, I don't know why, but IPython, only for those who use Python, IPython is a very nice, intelligent terminal, and a lot of self-discovery is possible in IPython terminal. And so, well, technically it's a REPL environment for Python. So there was again some upstream problem with IPython and other tooling, and it just happened to be reported by someone using h5py, but turned out to be not h5py's problem. This one is actually a long-standing issue. For since ever h5py was created, the way how it was dealing with actually overwriting an attribute that already existed. So in other words, you had an attribute of a group or a data set, and you wanted to actually write a new value in this attribute that was a different data type and everything. So previously, h5py was creating a temporary attribute, then deleting the old one, and then renaming the temporary attribute. And that started creating problems and errors. And there's been for quite a long time, for example, here there was basically running out into the HDF5 libraries error, can't rename attribute, record is already in B3. And especially when track order was set to true. And so this fix essentially it takes another approach. That basically just modify instead of create a temporary, delete the old one, rename. So we'll see how this goes. Probably will take away this error problem, but maybe introduce some other issues. Maybe if there are some kind of race conditions and things like that. But I think this is the original issue that we're discussing. Yeah. And I even think that people used to, I think there is an issue on the HDF5 library GitHub repo about this. I think some of them actually maybe mention it, or some of these issues that are maybe now closed. I've seen that one. Can't find now here. But anyway, it's appearing. And hopefully now this approach may do something better or long term. Anyway. Any questions? No questions. Okay.
Yeah, Alexander?
Yes.
So interesting that this Astype is removed.
Yes.
Well, is there a recommendation for people who are using Astype h5py, how to work around that?
So it says read data by slicing the return object instead.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
So Astype is like, let's say I have a data set that's F8 and I want to read to F4, right? So now you don't have Astype. So I read a NumPy array as F8. And now is there a NumPy method to convert that to a different data type?
For NumPy itself, probably yes. I would say probably yes. I'd be surprised if it doesn't.
I mean, slicing doesn't seem to address the issue, right?
Yeah, I don't know exactly. Actually, I think that using the Astype as a context manager has been removed.
Okay. Oh, there's still a way to do Astype.
Yes, yes, but I think as a context manager has been removed, so you cannot do with this Astype something, something like that.
So in h5pyd, we never got around to implementing Astype, and now I'm hoping, wow, now I don't need to. If I just wait long enough, the feature will go away, and I can ignore it. But
that's the best. That's the best strategy. Just wait, and the feature will go away or be deprecated. And just never existed. Yeah. So that's So yeah, basically that's pretty much what's in this one, this release. As I said, I think as yesterday was done, and I'm not sure when it'll show up in these places where people just do install, but eventually it will. Other than that, which one was kind of interesting? There was an interesting one that was closed, but I actually wanted to mention it because no, yes, this is the one. So this is an interesting case because a person essentially said that they had a HDFI file. They actually submitted the file and did all these nice things. And so they had an attribute that actually was an HDFI enum data type. You see here, and all these values. And so the question is, the h5py was kind of returning the number associated with one of these enum values. But it was very interesting for me because I was thinking, so what's the right way to approach this? Because if someone actually did the right thing in HDFI file and went through the labor to actually created enum data type and everything else, what should actually h5py or any other software, let's say, in Julia or whatever, should they return essentially some kind of object that in that language is appropriate for an enum value, and then allow people to work in a more natural way with enum, rather than just saying, oh, here's 3, and somehow someone has to know what that 3 means for this file and for these data and from those data. And generally, it kind of didn't get much. it basically said, well, live with it. It's like, I think the opinion was, shrug emoji, whatever, like it's life. But I'm not sure exactly what's the right way to do it. Like, should actually something be returning the actual Python enum object? Because in NumPy, I don't think there is an enum. As far as I know, maybe I'm wrong. That thing is developing itself as well, but I don't think they have an enum data type. But then again, so what h5py should do? Because in Python, you do have an enum class. So you could actually have a completely valid Python enum object with these things. So anyway, that's something that I kind of thought about. I think it's a nice example when you have a somewhat, unusual data type. And in this case, it's actually how, it's not a committed data type. In other words, no one put it in the file and said, hey, I have an enum, and, you should all know about it. But yeah, this is only enum for this attribute in this, example file. But it's an interesting question. What would you prefer? What value? What kind of object should h5py return? And I don't think I have an answer, obviously, but I just found it to be an interesting case. Yes, this was a recent. Someone was basically, but this is h5py's problem. They were trying to do virtual sources and virtual layouts from h5py, and they discovered that basically they cannot do this kind of stacked slicing one after another, which theoretically you could do as far as Python syntax allows. But that was, how it's done, how virtual sources were implemented in h5py, they were not allowing. So just, I don't know, maybe an hour or so ago, there was a merge that basically will raise an error and prevent this kind of thing. It's going to only allow a single slicing operation of a virtual source, and not allow any more follow-up. And this is an example where I don't think the HD5 library minds anything. It's just how all these capabilities and features were translated into Python and h5py to make it more accessible and understandable to other users. And in that, if you will, translation, or design approach, you kind of lose some of the capabilities that HDF5 library itself allows. And that's this is like a good example, I think, of that. Okay, well, these are open ones. What we have here, interesting. Maybe let's see. Yeah, this is the most recent where I was trying to help something, but we'll see how it goes. But the person was trying to build h5py on Windows computer, but also to use a different Python implementation called h5py, which is not the standard Python implementation called CPython. And this one supposedly has some kind of just-in-time compiler and gives much better performance over the standard CPython implementation. And but because of that, you kind of have to build everything from scratch, from source. And the person was trying to build h5py and having problems on the Windows computer, as I say. And eventually, I think what that person figured out with me trying to be, helpful here, is that, let me see. Yes, so he figures out that this is essentially the folder name. All of these things that I'm highlighting is the folder name where Python installation tools are constructing when he's trying to build h5py from source on a Windows computer. As you can see, there's quite a lot here to process. We have here the Visual Studio Code, the release thing, and then the build comes from the Python, and then the temp, and then the architecture things from Python, the build tools and everything. Anyway, all these things unfortunately comes with not 269 characters, and apparently somewhere in the Windows there's 260 or something like that character limit on file name, and therefore this thing failed. And I Googled this morning, and it's actually a known problem on Windows and Python build tools that so far no one is fixing. And the only thing that apparently kind of worked is that I suggested that this person builds h5py in a developer mode, which is kind of like not really installation in the system place of Python packages. It's like you're building from source in the folder where everything else is, but the build process avoids constructing all these random folder names. And he reported success there, but then he reported problems importing h5py immediately. So we'll see what that goes, how that works. Oh, someone else then said that try some other flag to pip, and maybe that helps. But anyway, those are the kind of problems people sometimes deal with. And other than those, I don't think anything else to mention really. Oh yes, this one is interesting. Yeah, that's the one, the last one I like to mention. This is the one that someone wanted to use a float 16 from Python, and my understanding is float 16 is very popular with machine learning models. When you store the results of training and model coefficients and stuff like that. But he also wanted to apply scale offset, and basically he couldn't create a data set with float 16 and scale offset. He was getting some error. And long story short, he did some actually benchmarking here, and he basically tried to use float 16, float 32, and float 64, and compare them, storing them in HDF5 dataset with no scale offset, and then with scale offset applied for a single decimal place, just one decimal place. And he reported benchmarks. But the important thing here was that he concluded that regardless of the data type, it was the exact same amount of byte that the data sets were occupying. And so he kind of concluded it doesn't matter.
You know, Alexander,
yeah.
I think this is a feature of the scale offset. It doesn't actually reduce data size. Scale offset filter just wipes out the low order bits. So the idea is that you should combine it with a compressor. So you apply a scale offset, you reduce the least significant bits, and then gzip or whatever can better compress the data.
Yes, you're correct. And so that's basically that. And it was interesting that he said that it's like, where was I saw that? Something like, yes, just keep in mind that the read and write performance degrades once scale offset is applied, which I mean, it's like, yes, I mean, if you want to apply a filter, of course, that filter will take some time, versus the no filter the data. But yeah, there's a lot of people who now coming from this data science, AI, machine learning circles that are kind of a little unaware of what things happen under the hood, if you will. And it's a nice to, sometimes follow them on their path to discovery of something when they actually think that there is a problem and they try to maybe address it or not. So that's basically all I have. Let someone grab, as I was scanning this thing, something interesting. I'll wrap it up here and ask, are there any other HDF5 or HDF related questions out there? All right. If not, then I'll ask, is any other member of HDF group present at this meeting wants to say something or announce something? I don't want to make this meeting only about me. So.
Well, I could talk. I'm going to put a link in the chat because registration is open for our HUG event, HDF users group meeting, which happens August 16th through 18th in Columbus, Ohio. So we now finally have registration set up and everybody can register to see us there.
Okay, excellent.
Next week's Call the Doctor host will be Scott. And we shouldn't have to worry about him being on a boat or anything crazy. So should be straightforward next week. Anything from anyone else? Nope. Okay. Thank you, Alexander. Thanks everyone for coming.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.